Good afternoon. And Linda says it's morning. She says good morning. It's afternoon here, Linda. I'm glad you're here, though. Glad you're here, young lady.
Yeah, that's right. She's in Seattle, so she's 3 hours behind us.
Yeah. She catches us early.
It's
Early, early,
9:30.
early.
It's
Mm,
9:30 in Seattle.
yeah. So baby girl's over here eating her chicken treats. And you've been busy. What you been doing? What have you been doing? Oh my land.
Investigating and studying, reading, and walking to the trash can, walking through the house, everything.
Hmm. All right, here we are again at an impromptu. For those who may come in later who don't know who we are, I am Antoinette Sawyer, and this is my husband, Clifton.
I don't know who he is.
Norman is our sidekick.
I know that man.
He's an Apostle Norman Armstrong down in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. We're in North Carolina. He's in South Carolina. And we're here for another conversation.
Is that what that is?
It's a conversation.
Conversation.
I don't know about all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and Linda says she's happy that BG's doing well. Yeah, BG's doing pretty good. She's just gotten to where she can't tolerate dry food. Now I've got to, and she's on that prescription food, so that canned food is expensive.
Wow.
But yeah, so what do? You got to take care of your little baby. So anyway, she's doing pretty good right now. She's playful and everything. She's been coughing a little bit from the pollen. When she goes out, she comes back in and she's coughing. But other than that, she's great. She's great.
Good.
Yeah. So what did you preach last night?
I didn't preach last night. I will be doing it tonight. I was down.
That's right. You said that. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you're going on. You're going on tonight.
Yes, I will be live tonight at 7:30.
All right.
Oh, what'd you do last night other than not go live?
You said he was under the weather.
I was on top of the weather and I didn't see you.
You was on top of the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Dee Dee, I'm glad you're here, sweetie pie. Let me ask you a question, Pastor Norman. You asked this one last time to kick things off.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Do you think that how I want to word it? Do you think people in the circles that we've been in will ever come to the place of doing their own critical thinking, or will they? And I know it's different for different demographic areas. Like you were saying, in your area, the culture is so different. But critical thinking means I'm going to stop and take a look at what I've been hearing. I'm going to see if it makes sense. You saying no already?
If you're gonna do any of this, you got to be crazy. You can't make sense out of it. I keep trying to tell them sense and this is crazy stuff. It ain't.
I understand. I understand that, but I'm saying coming to a place of actually being open-minded enough to hear it and not run from it or not fight it. Go ahead. I don't want to keep cutting you off. Go ahead.
Well, it's funny that you asked that question because I just asked a question to a couple on yesterday. I believe that there are some that will. I mean, some doesn't make reference to any particular number, but there will be some that will not. And going back to again in the days of Jesus and his ministry on the earth, remember he made a statement. He gave a parable about you can't put new wine in old wine skins, and it's because they're rigid and unflexible. Then he mentioned about taking a piece of new garment and trying to add it to an old new garment to an old piece of garment, different in strength and appearance. And then he mentioned the last part of that proverb was that there will be some that even when the new wine is presented without them even trying it, they would say the old one is better. And you don't even know, you haven't even tasted or tried the new wine. And so I asked a question to a couple that I'm doing a premarital counseling sessions for them. And I asked them, they're members of my church, and I said, what is your feelings and how do y'all like the difference that we're in now when we have service, because we don't have the music, we don't have the praise team and all of that. We just go in, we do a very small short devotion, and then we get right into the word.
Yeah.
And the statement that was made to me actually shocked me. They said they actually love it because it goes back to something that you said weeks ago about serious seekers. They saw that a lot of the other things that we used to implement, and we're not saying that it was bad or we're trying to demonize it and cause chaos and confusion. It was just the fact that there are those that really coming to the place of awareness and awakening, and they're saying that the other stuff was more of a distraction to them.
Okay.
Even the young people, that's the thing that shocked me. Even when they share with me concerning their teenagers, they're saying they're learning more. And
Okay.
that the other stuff was more of a show, a performance, a feel good, and not learning anything. And so I was shocked that they mentioned that they like the way that we're doing things now.
Good.
So again, we're not criticizing, because we want the worship, the music and all of that, but do we not come together and share because we don't have those things right now?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I believe that there are some people that are awakening, because I have had people in those circles that we travel and start asking me questions. So again, I believe there are some, and you are very correct about geographic locations, because I'm noticing people that are more up north and in city areas versus rural areas, they have come to the place of being more open-minded than the people, especially in my area, because it is a very religious.
The deep south. The deep south is very, very religious. In fact, it's been called the Bible Belt. And so, but I think that even if a person is a student of the Bible does have this non-dual truth in it. It's kind of coded. And until your eyes come open, or the willingness hits you to want to know more or understand more, you don't see it. And I've read scriptures before, just based on my own experience. I've read scriptures before, and then go back, say, a year later, and look at it and get a whole different interpretation.
Yes,
because I had evolved. Yes,
exactly. I can testify to that. I've had that happen to me quite frequently, and again, it goes back to, and I. It's funny because I just preached a series on open mind, open doors, and I talked about people being very open minded, because when your mind is open and you're allowing your consciousness to broaden, there is so much light that comes in.
yes.
So that is all that's going on right now, and especially all the things that's happening. People are asking questions. They are becoming very intuitive, because they're understanding that all the religious conditioning that we went through, it is not solving anything.
Right.
And that's where people are now asking me questions. Even in the gym, I got people approaching me all the time. What you think about this? What you think about this? What you think about what's going on? What you think about all these different questions? And of course, because of me opening up my mind to things, I have been able to give answers that kind of enlighten some people.
Yeah, and in a way that they hadn't heard before. And let's see what Linda's saying. She's saying conditioning can be hard to overcome. Yeah. When you are raised in the beliefs and a sense of belonging to a special group, it's hard to give it up. And you are so right. It has to come from higher self, not separate self.
Linda is on it.
She's right on it. Right on it. Yes. Right on it.
And I want to kind of piggyback on that because I actually went through that. I did.
And we did too.
It was hard for me to when you're a person that you, first of all, I'm very intuitive. I'm going to ask questions. I want to know. And when you go to God and you're beginning to notice that certain things that you was that people cause you to embrace because they kind of like, this is how I got to be done. They kind of forced it on you, and then you buy into it. And so I've had a lot of religious beliefs that I have to admit has literally been destroyed.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
And I think it came through when y'all started doing the teaching on no judgments. And that's why I see, especially in the religious circles that I was involved in, they were very judgmental. They were so wanting to send people to hell, always criticizing this person, always judging this one, judging this church, wanting to take people from one church and come over to the next. It was just crazy and chaotic. And again, like I said, I went through a major awakening when the pandemic happened. And so I'm at a better place of peace, a better place of joy, because I'm not allowing my conditioning to affect my evolving.
Yeah.
And so we all go through evolution, but it was hard. It was hard for me to change the way I thought about things. Religious concepts such as divorce and other things dealing with demonic powers and how we handle that and so forth and so on. And so because I just was still, like the Bible said, be still and know that he is God, there was a lot of things that he started say, I want you to look at this. I want you to look at that. What you think about that? I was actually having a conversation. Yeah. And that's how I realized that I was being imprisoned by the religious conditioning that I was once again had embraced and was once again presented to me. And so a lot of people have to go beyond the part of just taking a person at their word. They have to go on a journey of investigating. Like Dad said all the time, he was investigating. And see, and I'm that type of person. I want to know. I'm going to investigate. And so there are people that just casually go through life, and there are people that literally are very intuitive and they want to know.
And based on and that's very good analogy of what you're using. And based on what Linda said, I feel like we have literally been delivered or are being delivered from legalism, from tribal mentality, from elitism. We are being delivered from arrogantly thinking we know everything, are experts on God. We're being delivered from so much and so many things, and it's difficult. It's like a deprogramming that's taking place, and it's all happening by grace because there's no guru here to lead us through it. For those of us who've been in evangelical, charismatic, spirit-filled churches, there is no guru that can lead us out of that. Even other types of sacred texts, such as the Course and Buddhist writings, Advaitas, the Gitas, all of those things are there, but no, there is no being that leads us out of it, because unless they've been in it, they don't fully understand the way your brain ticks. And I heard one minister called it church brain. And it's like that becomes a very focal point of your life. Church is a focal point. It's like you dare not go to church. And when you went, you had to go to one that you felt was perfect and that the people were perfect. And I mean, it was all kinds of misconceptions wrapped up in it. It's just craziness. And especially when you embark upon the spiritual gifts and the prophetic, then you start to try to make everything supernatural. And then there's a lot of us that become spiritually obsessed, not really living with common sense at all. And so it's like a deliverance that's really taking place.
Exactly. And I'm glad you used that word common sense. This is so funny. I had a gentleman approach me this morning in the gym, and he said, I have a question to ask you. Every time you see me, he has a question to ask me concerning church wedding. He said, what do you think about this? He said, there's a lady, and she claims to be an evangelist. All right. She's an evangelist. And she said she was in the store, and the Lord spoke to her and told her to give this large sum of money to this 2-year-old kid. All right. Now the mother was in the store, but she wasn't around the little 2-year-old at the time. All right. And so she was going to give this little child, 2 years old now, this large sum of money, and the Lord said it was for a bill, right? So when the mother came, she said that immediately she changed her mind when she saw the mom, because it was as if, she should get. So I have to be honest, I started laughing. I started laughing. And I said, when you talked about people getting so spiritual, so deep, I mean, there was a saying, so heavily minded to win no earthly good. Common sense would tell anybody. That's why I said you use that word common sense, because a lot of people that get into this thing, religion, they lose all common sense. If God told you to give a large sum of money to a 2-year-old, what do a 2-year-old know about a bill?
They'll put it in their mouth.
No concept of a bill or nothing. So obviously, the 2-year-old was used as a catalyst for the family. So if you're going to give the money, give it to the mama. No one's going to give a large sum of money to a 2-year-old who has no understanding of money and also paying bills.
Right.
So why would you change your mind into giving once you saw the mother? So that tells you right then and there, you did not hear God.
Yeah. Now I have to admit, there are different kinds of thinking in different denominational churches. And the reason I mentioned the charismatic, spirit-filled evangelical churches, because that's the circle we were involved in. And a lot of us have said that God spoke about something, and I question whether or not God actually spoke. Exactly. But we used to teach. You used to teach it way back in the day, how to hear the voice of God. And everybody in those circles wants to know how to hear the voice of God. But most of us wanted to hear the voice of God simply because we didn't want to make any mistakes. We wanted everything to turn out perfect. And then if it didn't, we could blame God and not ourselves.
Exactly.
We didn't take responsibility for anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We cannot be honest with ourselves, especially in those circles. We can't be honest with ourselves that there are a lot of things that we claim that God said. We need to be, God didn't say it. Because first of all, if we deal with intelligence, he is an intelligent God. Come on. Why? In just using that example, you heard God to give a 2-year-old large sum of money to pay a bill.
I question that first.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that's when back in my day, especially when Dad was doing the teaching, I remember that. I remember when Dad did the teaching on hearing the voice of God. That way back in the 80s. And so I remember that. And again, like all I can share is my experiences. I wasn't raised up in religious circles. All right. And when I'm from Newark, New Jersey, every now and in a blue moon, we may go to church, like for Easter, like you said, on Sunday. Most people come to church for Easter. Special things, but I mean, we didn't sit around talk about God and talk about Christianity. I was not exposed to Christianity really until I moved down south.
Okay.
And even then, the church I went to was not charismatic. It was more on the culture of the Catholic Church. I was Reformed Episcopalian. So we didn't talk about the Holy Spirit and being baptized.
Right.
We didn't talk
Right.
about speaking in tongues and the gifts. We went, heard a good sermon, and we went home. That
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there was never a question. Anybody want to be saved? It was
Right.
anybody want to join the church? You go
Yeah.
to confirmation class and stuff like that. But I
Yeah.
had an experience that happened to me that I had no one that really could explain it to me. And when it happened, my ability to hear the voice of God amplified. I can read people's thoughts. You know, that's when we start talking about people prophesying and so forth. And so it was when I moved to North Carolina to go to North Carolina A&T State University, and I met you guys in '86. Bishop was able to reveal to me and teach me what was really going on with me.
Okay.
And so it was then that, you know, okay, now I understand what's going on, what happened. I had a greater concept of who God is. But see, as y'all evolved, those of us that still yet stayed connected, we evolved as well.
True. True. True.
And then there were those that when y'all began to talk about the oneness and the awareness, because of religious conditioning that they had received before they came to Cornerstone, they couldn't embrace it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why when you asked the question earlier, some will and some won't.
Exactly. Exactly. Linda says it is so seductive to judge and to put down others, so separate self can feel empowered. And it is like a drug. It's David Hawkins, Dr. David Hawkins, who's no longer with us, he called it the juice. We get the juice out of it, and that's the juice is what we run after, and it becomes an addiction. And so let's see what my namesake says. She says, when people do that, are they the people that God called, or did they call themselves? I know we're not the judge. Well, and let's look at it this way, Antoinette. It doesn't mean whether they're called or not called. It's not that complex. It just means that their mind has infiltrated and is mixed and intermingled with that they feel they're intuitively getting from God. It may not be coming from a dark entity. It may just be coming from their own conditioning.
Exactly.
So there are a lot of reasons why people get caught up in that. And it doesn't mean God didn't call them or that they call themselves. It just means, and this is the other thing about a calling. And I use this analogy, which is funny, really, but when you got to go to the restroom, that's a calling. That's a calling. Something is calling you. The restroom is calling you. But then as you keep going and ignoring that calling, it becomes an urgency, a drive. Some people are answering a call, and some people are being driven. And I learned a long time ago that when I know you like that. You don't like that.
I saw his eyes get big.
When I talk like that, he does that. Then when he talks like that, it's okay. Yeah. But when some of us are being driven, but not so much by God, we feel like we have to give a person a word. We have to say something. We have to. And that drive is what has caused a lot of problems in that arena of the prophetic.
Exactly. And people got to remember that word call is synonymous to the word vocation. So people are trying to discover what their vocation is. But see, this is a problem again with religious conditioning.
That's good, Norm. I never thought about it like that, but you're right. They're thinking of it as a career.
Exactly. And so if we think like that, then we really have become one-dimensional in the church, where we think when someone is called, they either called to be a preacher, a deacon, an apostle, prophet. But like I tell my people, I say, I want you to understand something. God is bigger than just the church and our religious concepts. If you cook real good and you got a passion for it and you got a drive for it, my mom and I was just talking about this yesterday, then you were called to cook.
Yes.
So me being a preacher ain't no greater than you being a cook.
Exactly.
And that's where we have to get. You know, even when the young man was telling me, matter of fact, correction, he said evangelist. He said, no, this woman's supposed to be an apostle. And I'm like, why everybody wants to be an apostle? Why do they even know what it means to be an apostle? I've had people approach me. The Lord told me that he wanted me to be an apostle. And I wondered, would you ordain me to be an apostle? And yes, a lot of people got upset with me because I told them no.
Yeah. There was a year. Right. And this was years and years ago. This way before the pandemic. We met a young man that who had frequented our church before he became a minister and a pastor. And we met him at a restaurant. After we had our dinner, he was going in. And he stopped my husband and told him that he wanted to have an elevation service. Wow. And that he wanted to go through elevation. And I'm thinking, what's this rascal talking about? Elevation. So the misconception is if I have gifts, then I'm more spiritually advanced. If I can hear from God and you can't, then that makes me special. It goes back to what Linda says, conditioning, and it's spiritualized egos, a lot of spiritualized egos that are operating in ministry. Mm-hmm. And so so, and I don't know how we got off on this subject, but
it's based off of the question, because it does connect to, again, religious conditioning. Mm-hmm. Would people really wake up? Like, for example, most of the preachers that I deal with in that circle, when it comes to ordinations and all of that, now I always have to share my journey, especially with you guys. All right. Number one, I never walked up to anybody and said I was called to preach. Never. I never done it.
Yeah.
When Dad saw me, I was coming to y'all Wednesday because some students from A&T was coming. As a matter of fact, it's funny. They wanted me to come and analyze the church because they had experience how the Lord would use me and so forth. Because I was a minister on campus, and so I came and I was like, I fell in love with the atmosphere. I fell in love with you guys immediately. And of course, at the time, you know, you're looking for a place that you want to go worship and stuff like that. And so, Dad, I remember him speaking to me, and everything that he said, he was on point. He didn't know me from Adam, anything. And I remember all the stuff that the Lord had, you know, said to him, and especially when he spoke in my life, lay hands on me. So now he was the one that, now I already kept hearing about being a preacher, a minister, but I never would say it to anybody.
Yeah.
All right. And so no matter where I went, they were like, young man, you called to preach. And I'm like, no, not me. Not me. I'm not calling.
They did him the same way. Yeah, they did him the same way.
And so when Dad came to me and he said it to me, I'll never forget in my studyings at the dormitory at A&T, I was studying the relationship between Elijah and Elisha. And when I was studying that, something like a light bulb went off in me. And I remember coming to that Wednesday night Bible study after service over. I walked right up to Bishop and I looked him dead in the face and I said, no matter what happens, I'm going to be like Elijah was to Elijah. You are my Elijah. And from that point, that's where we were connected. And so there was a lot of things that he taught me, he revealed to me. I never mentioned to him about being no bishop. He said it. I never mentioned nothing about being no apostle. He said it. So why I'm saying all that is because if you're actually called to these vocations,
Yeah.
you don't have to go announce it. Whoever is the person that has the keys to your destiny, it will be revealed to them. And
Yeah.
at the right time, it will be announced to you and to the body.
Yes. I wanted to say this. You made me think of it. And I'm going to shut up because I know you may have something you want to share. But I think about Linda coming into these sessions with us. I don't know how churched you are, Linda, but you're kind of getting a bird's eye view of what it was like to live in our life, in our circle, in that tribe of church mentality. It was very deep. We were deeply entrenched and still are to a degree, because there is a longing in us for the church to come with us. And we haven't seen that happening. We fellowship with people who are outside of the church more so than those who are in the church. And it feels a little awkward still, because we're waiting for the church to catch up, and it hasn't so far. I'm grateful though for some. I saw one well-known prophet, and I'm not going to call his name, but one well-known prophet now is beginning to teach what is Christ awareness. Now, I didn't listen to him. I don't know how he's teaching it or what he's saying, but just to have that entitlement, that title of your sermon, that in itself is a biggie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But think about what Carlton Pearson said, and he actually said it to me. All right, when I told you I ran into him a couple of years ago in Georgia at Papados.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I've been listening to some of these mega preachers. I'll put it that way. He shared with me. He said, because when I began to talk about, oneness with him, and like, he looked at me, he backed up, and he said, "You ain't supposed to know this like that.
Yeah.
You better be careful," because he was talking about his experience with him like that, right? And he said to me, he said, "I'm gonna share something with you." He said, "There are so many pastors and leaders that do know this,
Yeah.
but they will not preach it nor share it in their congregation because it would affect their money."
Yes. And
Exactly.
and their popularity.
Exactly.
It will shut their church down.
Exactly.
If they don't know how to handle it, it will definitely shut their church down.
Because see, what people don't understand, being a pastor, and Paul said it best about being lovers of God versus lovers of men. If we be honest, oftentimes we're planning a program to impress the people.
Exactly.
So we're not really concerned about them awakening. We want to give them what they want. They want to feel good. And if you don't preach and you don't say it like, "I want to hear it and I want you to do it," then the Lord, here it is, Apostle Armstrong, I need to talk to you. I've been led by the Spirit of God to leave the church. All because I'm not giving you what you want versus what you need. And that's the problem with religious conditioning. We don't understand the difference between our actual need and what we want or desire. And so what causes us to be manipulated, and you said it, Mom, and it brought me back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That sense of belonging. That's where we become tribal. We have this need, this psychological need to belong to something or some group.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be honest with you. When in our transitioning from the legalistic religious mindset and coming out of that fog of everybody had to follow the Bible, everybody had to walk a certain way in their lives, they had to have a certain lifestyle. Coming out of the fog of that, We went to a lot of different groups, didn't we? And we thought, man, I found my niche. Because at that time, they were saying what I thought we wanted to hear, what we needed to hear to continue to move forward. But then as time went on, those groups no longer resonated with us. And so it's like we've been through so many groups, and every spiritual community that we've been through, not knocking any of them, like you said, not to bash any of them, they were necessary. However, we had to come to the final conclusion that we belong to no group. So I even those of us who've been students of the course, and I say that carefully, cautiously, because I don't want to offend any of them. But to be a student of the course is still to be part of a group. It's still a tribal mentality. And so we are students of the Bible. It's a anybody, any group, I'm going to call them people of the book. Any book, sacred text. If you're a people of the sacred text, you will only go so far because you're stuck in tribal mentality. Mm-hmm. So we came to a place where there is no group. These groups is what needs to be dismantled. Mm-hmm. Because it's all of us. It's all of us. Mm-hmm. It's not this group versus that group, and we agree or don't agree. It's none of that. You were not in different categories and groups, but that's how we've lived. That's the mind of separation. That goes back to what Linda says. Love calls us. Separate self can't do diddly. Separate self is an effect and not a cause. Exactly. So I tell you, it's this conversation needs to be had with a lot of pastors.
And I'm glad you said that, because that is the platform that I am working on. When it's going to happen, I hope we can get it done this year, because it is, like I said, if it wasn't for the fact of what I went through, like I said, since 2020, and a lot of people have as well. Mm-hmm. And then now these certain individuals coming out of nowhere, and they're asking me these questions because, again, a lot of them know who I am and so forth. So when they will see me in stores or whatever, they'll walk up to me and they have all these different questions. And so I share with some young people, and let me tell you, the young people are the ones that's really wanting to. They're the ones that really have the open mind. I'll put it that way.
And you know why? Because they're coming up in a generation, or I said in this particular time era, where everything's more fluid. Genders are more fluid. Everything's more fluid. They're going to school with all kinds of cultures, and they're having to intermingle with people that those of us who are older didn't do. We didn't have that chance. We grew up in an era where if a black person moved into a white neighborhood, the whole of whites moved out. So they are not experiencing that. They're not experiencing not being able to go to a certain section of town. They're not experiencing. Now, there are still some of that going on, but overall, generally, they are not experiencing that. So they're more inclusive.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're much more inclusive than we were.
And if we follow the ministry of Jesus, I love what Linda put up there again about love calls us.
Yes.
Love also should be our motivational factor.
Exactly.
We should be doing it out of love, not to control people. I love, again, in order to love, you have to sacrifice oneself. All right. And so that's
you said it perfectly, and I put it on Facebook. You said it several months back. You said love gives itself.
Exactly. And that's what Jesus did. He gave himself. He was not legalistic. Many, again, people, think about all the different, like when they brought the woman that committed adultery, law said to stone her. But what did he do? And I love the strategy that he did. He didn't even say, yes, Moses did say that. He didn't deny nor agree or whatever. All he said was, "Ye without sin cast the first stone."
Mhm.
Their own inner self, their own inner conviction would not allow them to
Yes.
stone her.
Yes.
So there was a place that Jesus was able to reach within them and in their consciousness that would not allow them to follow the law.
Yes. Yes. Well,
And
and you realize, and I know you do, when you can see your own faults and forgive yourself, it helps you to be able to see other people and actually walk in a non-judgmental place toward them, because you realize if you were given the same conditions in your life, you would potentially do the same thing that they're doing or not doing. So we're all the same. And I remember, and I said this before, that one of the gentlemen who used to frequent our classes, who's now gone on, Dad Harris said, "Love means sameness." It means sameness.
awesome.
Yeah, it means sameness. So anyway, hey, Tony Wilkins, I'm glad you're here. I'm just acknowledging you. You came in, and Antoinette Green came in. And Man of the Universe, you came in on us on Tuesday night. Yeah, first time. And glad you're back with us. He says scientists know truth and deny it too. Yeah, yeah.
And they do, and it's for the same reasoning. I mean, again, Jesus was considered a heretic.
Yeah.
He knew the truth, and we know it, but we use it as a cliche. You should know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Right? Not only did he know the truth, he was the embodiment of truth, and he presented himself to the world. And so, again, there are a lot of preachers, prophets, whatever you want to call it, even scientists, even politicians that know something that they will not reveal.
Yes.
It would get them in a tight situation.
Yes. You want to share something?
The love that Jesus is and the forgiveness that he is the same forgiveness that's inside of all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
The contrary and contradictions of feelings the pure self is not going to stop filtering through the falsehood of conditions. The power that is being used in our government is a God power. It is the same power that created the universe.
Because there's only one power, right?
But there's only one. But when I found this out, this is the way I saw it, and this is the way only way I can explain it. What is causing sin in our nation is the misuse of the God power. I wrote this down. We are using God's power, God's self power, to destroy each other. Cain killed Abel. There was no such thing as an evil power that caused him to kill his brother. It was the same power that God used, or that we used, to create the bodies from the dust of the earth during that time. This energy and power that is working in our government is the misuse.
And then in all situations where we would label it as evil or negative, yes.
And so when we stop turning as chameleons, stop turning into different things.
No, that's good.
And finally settle in on the true self. The United States and our government would always be turning back and forth from clan to clan.
Well, even what you just said, even beyond the government, stop turning into other things.
We are the, and there's another one. When when it is found out that you, the real self, the pure self, cannot undo forgiveness.
Yes.
It cannot, the pure self, the nature of the pure self cannot forgive. Because that's the way it is structured. So once this thing has struck us enough, I mean, I look at different ones that come on and say different things. I listen to you and I see you. And I know where you're coming from and I know what you're trying to say. But this stuff that we're talking about, eternal essence and forgiveness, there are no words to describe it. There's no syllables. There's no phrases. There's no saying, because when you see Jesus as the pure self, and he is, whether you see it or not, he does not talk with words. He communicates. In the beginning was the word. Now you said something about sewing new cloth to old cloth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've been in the upholstery business for a long time, and I have had cloth that was too short to go on an arm, and you heard me talk about it. I had to speak to it, and I hit it. When I did, it stretched out. I commanded it to stretch out, but this is crazy when I'm going to say this, and mystics will say this. You can walk into a tree and turn around and look at it, because that tree is using the God power that you are to grow, to produce.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here goes. Excuse me. You can take new cloth and sew it to old. You can walk in darkness and be light, and the darkness is still there. You can move in the atmosphere of your pure self, and all hell be broken loose around you.
That's true.
It won't change your pure self.
That's true.
But it'll cause the pure self to be looked upon as being evil.
Yes.
Because it does not back off from beingness.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the saddest things is that we claim that there's two powers in the universe, good and evil. It is not. When you take the power of a shotgun and kill a deer or animal, that shotgun ain't had nothing to do with it. It's just made for what it is.
It's the power.
It's the power. And you are creating something out of God's power to make it look deceptive.
Mm-hmm.
God is not deceived. The power of God, the person of God, the identity of God can never be deceived. But what is using it is deceived, because it thinks that there's two powers operating in the universe.
Yes. And at that moment, it's turned into another thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We are the angels of the Lord standing beside ourselves. We are the voice of God talking back to itself. When Jesus prayed, who did he pray to? The Father. And where was the Father? It was standing right there. He said to Peter that the words that he said was not coming from flesh and blood, but was coming from the Father. And the Father must have been standing right there at the time it was said. Then all of a sudden, Peter switched over from one identity to another. He didn't say it. His tonnage gave him away around the fire with the little girl who said, "Don't we recognize you? You used to be around Jesus." Yeah. He lied 3 times, said no. That same power that lied didn't change the fact that he was one with God. And it didn't change the fact that everybody standing around, even the little girl, was the real thing.
Yeah.
Now, you go into this settlement of identity, and you'll stop being schizophrenic.
Yes, that's it.
And I was getting ready to say that. I was waiting to chime in because I'm sitting here thinking about that. People are, we may say it in the psychological world, or the psychiatrists about multiple personality disorders, but that's what a lot of people are dealing with. They don't realize they're fighting with two identities. And Paul said, when I wanted to do this, something was
always present.
I did not want to do. I found myself doing. He was at war with himself.
What I didn't want to do, I did. What I did, I didn't want to do.
The enemy that we're actually fighting is our own conditioned self.
Exactly.
That is the identity. And so when Dad mentioned Cain and Abel, I went to it real quick. Remember, the Lord said to Cain that there was sin that was at the door. And he said, literally, it is your desire that you must it wants to overpower you, but you got to master it. That is how it said in the Amplified version. And so there is a nature. There is a nature that has these certain desires to do certain things, which is the conditioned self, but the true self, it has to overpower it. So again, Dad made a statement a while back that, oh boy, I had a lot of people ask me questions after he made that statement the last time y'all was here, when he said we are all, and I ain't gonna say the word, we are all overcoming. You know,
Yeah.
So
I'll say it for you. He said we're all recovering bitches.
Exactly. And it caused all those that was conditioned religiously. Whoa, they were like, nah, I don't care what did he call it? I'm like,
I ain't no bitch. You be calling me no bitch.
I had to share, y'all miss completely what he was saying.
You want the bitch while you react.
But so, even when you remember the scripture where it talks about Judas after he had betrayed, was getting ready to betray it, the question was asked of him, why did you allow Satan to fill your heart? And if you think about the word Satan, we think it's a proper name, but it isn't. It isn't a name at all. It's just, it means an adversary. Exactly. So what he was asked is, why are you allowing this adversarial thought to possess you? And until now, you've decided to move on it. That's what's happening. So like you said, there's no other power. But we being gods with a little g, are misusing the power. And when it's misused, then it looks evil.
Exactly.
You will see eventually that God, your true identity, is not going to move out of this position of destiny of being the real self.
Yes.
I don't care.
Yes.
And let me tell you something else. Right around DC area, underneath the foundation of government and the earth that place is sitting on, is going to drop into the earth, and the waves of the change of the atmosphere of nature and the cosmos is going to change, and that place is going to reveal more evil in the misuse of God's power in the area of separation and division. It is at the door of the epitome of hell for separation from each other, telling a lie that all they want to do is help the people. I look at the thousands of people over the country, over the land, the earth, that are without homes. They don't have any place to stay. They are drowning by the thousand. And all they can say is somebody didn't tell the truth about some paperwork that was stole from the White House. And they trying to prove who was guilty and who was not. Excuse me, but the hell with that, because that's where it is. It is hell, because there are people that are suffering now all over this globe. Earthquake, people are suffering, nowhere to stay out in the cold. and they're talking about who is real and who is not for the state and for the government, and trying to come up with new votes and new ideas for who is in the right position and who is not. Can't they shut down for 1 second?
They won't.
Can't they shut down for 1 second? They just fussing about Social Security coming to an end, and they're trying to decide on what party is right, the D's and the demos. There's two things you got to look out for in this world when you do it using the power of God. And I'm gonna say it that straight down the middle of the road.
Mhm.
There's two powers you gotta look out for. Two kind of people you gotta look out for: niggas and possums, because they both are hang up in a tree. And they'll swear.
I'm not sure what a possum person is. What's a possum?
He said they hang in a tree. A possum hangs upside down in a tree.
Well, I know what a possum is. But what is a possum versus a ninja?
Who?
A ninja.
A ninja? I ain't said about no ninja.
Well, that's the way I say it.
No, I don't know about ninja. No, I believe you.
I never said it. I like to say it in the N word. But I
call
it a ninja. I call it a ninja, yeah.
All of them will hang up in a tree because they swear they got control over everything. They know everything. They know everything. They know everybody. They know how they ought to be. They know how the country ought to be run.
But that's not just restricted to our political system.
No, I said
that's
that.
Restricted.
That's what I said.
I'm not
two kinds of people you have to look out for.
Well, I know, but it's also in the spirituality community.
Exactly.
It's everyday life.
The number one source of anything being destroyed is when they start seeking power. And that's what's destroying the world. That's what's destroying everything, every system. You have individuals that are so hungry for power.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny. I just watched a movie Tuesday, matter of fact, and that's why one of the statements that I put on, I caught revelation of that from this movie, and it's called Hunger. Now it's a low key movie, you know, but for some reason I was led to watch this movie, and it dealt with this young lady who was a chef, and she wanted to be a celebrity chef following this other guy. He was the one that made the statement and the reason why he got into it. He wanted people to not be hungry for his food. He said, "What you don't understand, they're hungry for me. That's why that's why I'm the top chef, because I made them hungry for me, not my food." So he would do these dramatic things and so forth. And so she wanted to be like him. And he told her, he said, "You do realize," because he asked her, why do you want to be with me? She said, "I want to be special." And later on down the road, he said to her, "You do realize that when you want to be special, you'll lose everything. You'll lose family, you'll lose friends, you'll lose all those things that meant so much to you because you have this hunger to be special." And so the whole movie took a whole different understanding. So there is a hunger for power that's happening right now. And I've gone back and looked over some history things that factors that cause nations to fall, like Rome and so forth. And the number one thing is on the list every time is when someone is so hungry for power.
Let me tell you how.
That's wonderful.
Let me tell you how, all of you guys, I want you to hear how I got started in the ministry. I had an experience, out of body experience. That's number one. And with that experience, I went to a church and I expressed to them what had happened to me and seeing the heart of Jesus. From that moment on, I was told that if I'm going to keep on telling things like this and talking and preaching everywhere I went, I'm going to have a license to preach. During that time, there was a lot of street preaching, and preachers, guys out on the street, were standing in front of businesses uptown illegally. They had to get permits to do it. Originally, they would not have if they had been nice and cool, but they didn't. And we went to a church in Winston-Salem where it was the epitome of where all these street preachers mostly came, and they teamed up with this pastor and the group in Winston, and they became a group of themselves who were going to take over Winston-Salem through preaching. I went from church to church, and they said that if I was going to keep on preaching, they were going to have to ordain me. I went to the Apostolic, the Baptist. I preached to different churches, and I told them about the power of God and how it was and how it worked. And I sought after this power to work miracles and healings. And I got to a certain point where we would have, after on Friday night, we'd have Bible study at certain people's homes and travel different places. To finally, somebody contacted me from down in South Carolina at a college and school and said they wanted to meet me. I went down there, went on television, and from there I spread from place to place. At that time, I was not a prophet, pastor, evangelist, pastor, teacher, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden they say, well, we're going to ordain you and give you a license. They gave me temporary paperwork as a young man, and the elders, they were all young. They all considered us to be young, inexperienced. And they really gave me a rough time, but I kept preaching evangelistic services on Sunday night. I went everywhere preaching. And then finally, I went to a guy's church in a college in Lower South Carolina. And one night he ordained me and presented me with the license to preach, and plus a high school diploma and 6 or 7 degrees in that area. I got into the circle and I started traveling. And somebody said in Greensboro, said, if we would find a building where we could have you come and preach to us every Sunday, would you be willing to do it? I said, yes. But I was still not considered as a prophet, evangelist, teacher, and all that stuff. Or pastor. And they made me that because they stationed me. I was living at 808 Oak Summit Road, and I was in the motel room of 808 Oak Summit Motel.
The Oaks Motel on Summit Avenue.
And I went there and I preached, and then one by one, they went around looking for buildings or Mount Zion Church in Greensboro.
Which is what they wanted. And I was willing to do it because I was open to talk about Jesus and the miraculous. And I went from church to church. And listen to this. I started out with nothing. And do you know, at this point, I still don't have anything. And what I started out with was an experience with God. Mm-hmm. And when I ended up with an experience with God, and all in between that, nothing. When you tell me you had a church and you got a building and a congregation and you lost them, you're talking to a man that's been through this. Mm-hmm. And it's in it now. It is a very, very depressing thing to think that you all of a sudden are doing what God told you and called you to do. And all of a sudden, you lose it. You're back to point one. Mm-hmm. I could run a 100-yard dash in 9.1, 9.5, 10 seconds on the best day. But when that run was over, I was just like anybody else out on the field. I lift 200, 300 pounds at 148 pounds in Olympic lifting, and I won every contest but one. And I deliberately didn't win one because I wanted the guy that I beat to win. I look back over my life and I see where I just wanted on my. Let me say it like this. The addiction to being on a high of positionality is one of the worst things you could ever get into. Mm-hmm. Being addicted to a positionality and being addicted to a gift. People will talk to you just to hear what God would say. Sometimes I wished I never got into it the way I did, but I had to go that route. My family and 2 people in my family was only preachers. That was me and my cousin.
My mom, all of my family knew what I was, but I caught hell from my family because I wouldn't do to them what they thought should do to them based on the way I was treated. I had favor with man and with God, and still do, but I lost a many of friends, and I still lose them now. I can count on one hand those that I mentored and worked with, maybe three. That would be you and maybe two more. I'm not going to call any names. If I had to start over, I would never have anything to do with church, no more than just what I had, and that was Jesus. And then in certain places, I can't talk about him because they look at you when you tell people that you can sew new cloth to old and the whole. They think you done lost your mind. My mama say, "Boy, you better get down from up there before you break your butthole." my, my mom used to say that all the time. And when you say to mama, how can you do that? I've always been blunt and direct.
Yeah.
And anything that I go after, I went wholeheartedly. I wouldn't be with this girl sitting beside me, and she would be if I wasn't determined to. I just go after whatever I do. I put a whole heart in it. I used to go around and tell people and preachers. I said, the Lord called you to preach. I know He did. I gave license all over my congregation, ordination. They didn't have to go through any tests like I did. I gave it to them, and a whole lot of made a mess out of their life because they didn't qualify for it. But I wanted them to know the heart of God, that what I went through with trying to get that, I didn't want them to have to suffer, but they suffered anyway out of ignorance of what to do with what they had.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know what to say about this God thing no more than I know Jesus Christ. And here's a good one. I tell people in all religions and anywhere, I had a chance to see God's compassion toward every denominational and religious circle.
Yeah.
In the council room, I saw him meet with every from Buddha, Muhammad, and every last one of them in one conference room, and is still with them now. Their titles have nothing to do with their heart.
Exactly.
Their hearts if their heart is love, I don't care what they call them, Obama's mama, sister, nieces, uncle, cousin, boy. If that heart is open, and it is, God don't have any problem with them. They can believe that God was a goat. They can believe he was a cow. They can believe he was a rabbit or a turkey sitting on a cloud. He still loves them with unconditional love.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else to preach. I don't know anything else to say. All I know that when I saw the heart of Jesus, I'm still getting more revelation like I did last night. I saw the left and right ventricle parts of the heart of Jesus pumping blood in and pulling blood out. I found the heart of God. Don't mess with that. But I didn't mess with it. It came to me.
It messed with you. Yeah.
He opened me up and he told me, he showed me, I'm going to give you my heart.
Yep.
And I'm going to take yours.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand what he was doing, but it messed me up in a good way or bad way. Here I am talking to dogs talking to me, talking to babies in people's stomachs, talking to all kinds of entities.
People that left their bodies. And
people left their
body,
and she talking to me about I'm talking in my sleep somewhere. I said, I'm gonna wake up one night talking so much I'm gonna tell my own mouth to shut up. Or sometimes I wake up, I can hear myself talking. I was talking this morning. upstairs. I talked this morning.
Yes, you were. You were.
I had a conversation. I don't understand it.
Well, look, Bonita, thank you for what you said,
I
sweetheart.
was gonna mention that. Yeah.
She says you guys are in a position to be a bridge because you understand the language and have the opportunity to use the language in more of an expansive context that leads to freedom. But
Can I say something?
yeah.
You know what a bridge is for? They don't understand. Well, you know what a foundation is of apostle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be walked on like a dog.
Mm-hmm. I was ready for you to share that.
You will be stepped and mashed in the dirt, and yet the power of God shall survive.
Mm-hmm.
The office of Jesus Christ, the office of all the many sufferers and the mystical ones, they will be in your presence.
Mm-hmm.
While the feet is mashing your head in the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a condition, it is a fact. If you don't want to see God, leave this alone. Don't mess with us. Don't mess with this. Because you will get a chance to look at the size shoe that Jesus wear, and the ones that are wearing it that swear that he put it on their feet, and they walk on the streets of gold, but take those same golden sandals and step on your face and swear that God told them to do it. I rest my case.
Yeah.
I rest my case.
Well, listen, we are way over time, but listen, it was such a good conversation today. Did you have anything else you want to share, Pastor On, before we get ready to close up?
I mean, just in reference to what Dad just shared, I was waiting for him to share that because he shared that with me several years back. To be what we are a bridge, we are the foundation, and you have to be prepared for people to walk over you, and so forth. And what's so funny about it is while they're walking over us, in order for them to get to the other side, we have to remain strong. And so that's the thing. When Dad shared that to me, I understood even the more to be what we are. And really, you can't give a religious title for it. We just are what we are. But again, we are being used as a bridge to get people to cross over to the other side.
Yeah, and you realize that, and when we hear the words being walked on, we think of it in a negative connotation, but if you step on a rose, you only get more of its fragrance.
Exactly.
You only get more of its fragrance. You crush it and you get more of its fragrance. And so the more people use the foundation that you are to walk on, the more of your fragrance and presence is going to be emitted into their atmosphere, into their presence. So it's a good thing because you were built for it. That's the main thing. You're not like a twig that somebody's walking on. You're built to carry the weight.
You know what? I'll sit down in the closet with you every time I go in there. And if you want to know something about God, I'll show him to you. I'll point him out. I'll tell you where he is. I'll tell you what he's doing. I'll tell you where he lives. I'll tell you how to locate him. I'll tell you everything about him. But it won't leave you out.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I tell God about you, I tell God about him. And everything I tell God about him, I tell about you. That ain't no hard thing to do. Now, I used to think it was. I used to think I used to have a good blast of anointing. Do you know if you have to sit around in church and wait for music to stir you up for you to get some kind of anointing where you can speak what you've been wanting to speak for a long time, you ain't nothing but a fool, castrated and separated in the ignorance. If you have to wait for that, you have to wait for all that be stirred up for somebody to get 1,000 people together and you start singing before you can find God.
You're in trouble if that's the case.
Excuse my friend, but you done lost your damn mind.
Okay.
That's the mind that's hold up by the dam. Now I ain't cussing. That's a mind that's blocked by a dam on that wall. You can't get through it because it's stuck.
Mm-hmm. That's the religious conditioning again.
You'd be better off to go in the woods and go bear hunting with a switch.
Look, Dad, before you run everybody away.
Okay.
No, he get on that soapbox. He run every last one of you away. But we thank you for tuning in to us today.
Thank you,
Marvita, glad you're here, sweetheart. I see you on there. And we will be back next week, Lord willing, and nothing comes up to stop it. We'll be back again with another impromptu at 12:30 with Pastor Norman.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And if you have the inclination to give, you can do it through our Cash App. Pastor Norman's is going on the screen as well as mine. And feel free to bless us as the Lord has blessed you. And we hope that you got something out of what we talked about today.
Yes.
And
I'm looking for some kind of way we can get down there to see you.
We're three pastors that are experiencing the liberation of non-church and non-judgments and have come to a place of seeing who we are. And that's what we talk from. So preferably it resonates with you and you'll come back to visit us next time. And in the meantime, be blessed and we'll see you again.
The first time I talked to God today was when I talked to you. The next time I talk to God again, it's going to be through you.
Amen.
See you guys later.
All right. See you next time.
Great day.